I recently found out that my husband Terry purchased a high-rise condominium right across from the train station. Out of nowhere, he brought up this unexpected topic. I knew he had been considering it, but I had no idea he'd actually gone through with it. The view from the condo is breathtaking, and everything inside is spotless. But here's where it gets strange. I was completely in the dark about it. Can you believe he secretly bought a luxury condo while I was away visiting my parents? I couldn't wrap my head around it. Where did he even get the money? Then, as if it was nothing, Terry casually mentioned that he used the money from selling our previous place to make the down payment. He went on to tell me that he'd be moving in with his parents, without me. I stood there, stunned, as he calmly asked me to leave. I was so taken aback that I couldn't even respond. My name is Carol, and I'm 31, currently 8 months pregnant. Each day, I get more excited about the arrival of our baby, though I'm nervous about giving birth for the first time. My husband Terry is 2 years older than me at 33. He works at a well-known company, and we've been married for 4 years. After facing challenges with conception, I was overjoyed when we finally got pregnant. But now, this shock about the condo has left me unsure of what's happening. To calm my nerves, I've been spending more time at my in-laws' house. On one visit, Terry's sister-in-law, Madison, asked, "Carol, you're about to become a mom soon. How do you feel about it?" "To be honest, it doesn't feel quite real yet," I told her. Madison, who's married to Terry's older brother, is one of the reasons I enjoy visiting. While I don't interact much with my brother-in-law, Madison and I have grown close. She's a housewife like me and lives with my in-laws. 2 years ago, my mother-in-law's mobility started to decline, and Madison stepped in to care for her since she has experience as a caregiver. My mother-in-law mainly uses a cane to get around and does fine on her own most of the time, but Madison still helps out a lot. I've been so impressed by how easily she took on that responsibility without hesitation. Madison and her husband have a 4-year-old daughter, and watching her as a mother has eased some of my anxieties about pregnancy and childbirth. I often find myself looking to her for advice as my due date approaches. With just a month left until my baby is due, I decided to visit my parents to prepare for the birth. Despite the heaviness in my belly, I enjoyed shopping for baby clothes and daydreaming about our future. It was refreshing to spend time at my parents' house after so long. But then, 3 days past my due date, the contractions began. I tried reaching out to my husband, but he was completely unreachable. No calls, no texts, nothing. At first, I was worried that he might be caught up at work or in some sort of trouble. But as my labor pains grew stronger, I didn't have time to wonder where he was. The only thing on my mind was bringing our baby into the world. Eventually, I gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. The moment I held her in my arms, the indescribable joy I felt washed over me, making everything else seem distant. But the fact remained. My husband, who had promised to be by my side, missed the birth. Exhausted from the delivery, I didn't have the energy to confront him right away. Instead, I sent him a brief text announcing the arrival of our daughter and then drifted into a deep sleep. When I woke up, I heard someone calling my name. "Are you still asleep?" "Terry, is it morning already?" I mumbled, opening my eyes to find my husband and his parents standing there. Despite my clear request for privacy after the birth, here they were. "Why didn't you come yesterday?" I asked, my frustration evident. He shrugged off the question, avoiding a direct answer, and casually replied, "It couldn't be helped." His tone was light, as if his absence and the sudden appearance of his parents were trivial matters. I was left grappling with a whirlwind of emotions, from the pure joy of holding my newborn daughter to the bitter disappointment in my husband. When I needed him the most, he chose to go out for sushi with his parents. He justified it by saying it was a prior commitment, and afterward, he didn't come to the hospital because he'd had a few drinks and thought he'd be more of a nuisance than a help. The knowledge that he had been enjoying a meal while I was going through labor was disheartening. And now, here he was, oblivious to my hurt, asking casually, "So, where's our baby?" I told him our baby was in the nursery, a healthy baby girl. Upon hearing this, my mother-in-law grimaced and muttered, "A girl? What a useless wife," shocking me with her harsh words. My father-in-law joined in, shaking his head in disappointment, calling both Madison and me pathetic. I was stunned. Instead of receiving any gratitude for enduring childbirth, I was met with criticism. Even Terry wasn't pleased. "Damn it, I knew it was a girl, but I was hoping for a boy," he said, echoing his parents' obvious disappointment. Their frustration over not having a grandson was palpable, especially since Madison's first child had also been a girl. But to me, none of that mattered. Our daughter was precious no matter her gender. As I sat there, overwhelmed and hurt, Terry chose to side with his parents, deepening my dismay. I was seething inside, but the physical and emotional exhaustion from childbirth left me too drained to confront them. Thankfully, a nurse overheard our conversation and intervened, asking them to leave. At last, I had some much-needed peace. Since then, Terry hadn't visited us again at the hospital. When it came time for our discharge, I didn't even bother calling him. Instead, I asked my parents to pick us up and take us to their home. The thought of returning to a house filled with tension and disappointment was unbearable. As I sat at my parents' place, holding my baby, I couldn't help but reflect on the changes in Terry. He used to be so caring when we first got married. I suspected that his transformation had something to do with the significant mistake he made at work 2 years ago, a mistake that caused his company a major financial loss. Although his colleagues managed to soften the blow, sparing him direct consequences, his career took a serious hit. No matter how hard he worked afterward, he couldn't regain his previous standing. Since then, I noticed Terry becoming more detached and colder, both at work and at home. Adding insult to injury, one of his juniors at the company, who had once been less competent than him, was now his boss. This reversal of roles seemed to weigh heavily on him, fueling his irritability and distance. Even as I grew more dissatisfied with his behavior, I had hoped that the birth of our baby might inspire a change in him. But as the days passed and he didn't even try, my worry for our family's future deepened. Out of the blue, Terry finally called me. "Hey, when are you coming back? You've been at your parents' for nearly a month since the baby was born," he said, his tone flat. I wasn't ready to return home, not with everything unresolved, but I found myself replying, "Sorry. I'm coming home soon. It's time to start fresh and pull it together for our daughter," I said, trying to focus on what mattered. I asked Terry if he could help me bring back the baby items. His response left me speechless. "You don't have to bring all that stuff back. I have something else to talk about. Maybe I should have told you over the phone," he said, his tone unsettling. Confused, I pressed him for clarity. That's when he dropped another bombshell. "I bought a high-rise condo right in front of the station." I was stunned. "What do you mean? Why are you bringing this up now?" He rambled on about the condo's spectacular view and how clean and modern it was, but my mind was stuck on the fact that he had moved out of our apartment while I was away. "Where did the money come from? You can't afford a place like that on your salary," I exclaimed, panic rising. Casually, as if it was nothing, he replied, "I made the down payment by selling our house." The ground beneath me seemed to disappear. "What? You sold our house? Where are your parents living now?" I asked, my voice shaking. His excitement was apparent. "Daddy and Mommy are living with me in the condo. I'm going to live with them now, in this great new place, so that it'll need a parasite like you around." I was floored. He was moving in with his parents, without my knowledge or consent, and now he was effectively kicking me out. I couldn't find the words to respond. He started referring to his parents in childish terms, boasting about their new life together in the condo. Adding insult to injury, he sneered, "You're cocky for just a housewife. You're useless without my salary. Besides, you've done nothing but laze around these days." His words hit like daggers. I stood there, reeling, questioning not only his love but how I had ended up married to someone so heartless. During my pregnancy, when I struggled with severe morning sickness and preparations for our child, he'd shown no sympathy. After the baby was born, he had coldly remarked that I was useless for having a girl. Worse still, he claimed his parents thought it would be better for him to be with a younger woman who could give him a son. He continued, explaining that his parents no longer wanted to live with my brother and his wife, indicating there was already family tension. As if that wasn't enough, he told me he had packed all my belongings and stored them in a unit, instructing me to collect them soon. The conversation turned even more brutal when he said, without emotion, "I've sent you divorce papers. I expect you to file them promptly." Then, without waiting for any response, he hung up. I sat there, stunned, the phone still in my hand. How had it come to this? I was married to a man who had turned into someone unrecognizable, someone cold and cruel. I felt regret, but more than that, I was left questioning everything I thought I knew. I knew I had to pull myself together for the sake of our daughter. After taking time to reflect, I resolved to sever ties with him and start fresh. I wasn't going to let him control my life anymore. Divorce? Bring it on. I was determined to show him he'd regret this more than I ever would. When I explained the situation to my parents, they were furious. They immediately supported me in taking legal action. As soon as I received the divorce papers, I signed and filed them. Half a month later, my husband unexpectedly showed up at my parents' house, fuming. He stormed in, slamming his bank book on the table. "What's this? Why is there a huge withdrawal from my account?" he demanded angrily. I remained calm and met his gaze. "Haven't you heard of the division of property? That's what this is. The account is in my name, and I'm not giving you a cent." His eyes widened in shock. "You couldn't have made that much money," he snapped. "Remember, your salary dropped because of your mistake at work, and now you think you can claim this money." I didn't flinch. "I've been working from home, and I've managed to match your salary. And since you're the one who wanted a divorce, we're dividing the assets." He stared at me, dumbfounded. "You've got to be kidding." That's when my father, who had been silently observing, finally spoke. "If you want to dispute this, we'll settle it in court. How dare you treat my daughter this way?" The room was tense. This had escalated beyond personal grievances. It was now a matter of legal and financial justice. I was ready to fight for what was rightfully mine and to protect my daughter's future. I wasn't backing down. I deeply regret that my daughter had to experience such turmoil because of Terry. One day, when he tried to confront us again, my father, who is a police officer, gave him a stern look that scared him off. Terry quickly left, and that was the moment I finally severed ties with him for good. We also resolved the division of assets. Since then, I've been living with my parents, focusing on raising my daughter. Parenting has become more familiar, and my daughter's adorable nature makes each day joyful. Life has been good, filled with the kind of happiness only a child can bring. A few months into our new life, I started receiving persistent calls from an unknown number. At first, I ignored them, thinking they might be work-related, but the caller wouldn't give up. Eventually, I answered, and to my surprise, it was Terry. "Hello, Carol," he said hesitantly. "What do you want?" I asked, skipping the small talk. "I'm having trouble paying the mortgage for the condo, and I might get kicked out soon," he confessed. "Oh, so you're short on cash?" I replied without much sympathy. "Yes, I've used up all my savings. Dad injured his back and had to quit his job, and Mom's been spending recklessly, bragging to her friends about living in the condo," he explained, his voice filled with desperation. I wasn't surprised. Terry had never been good with managing money, and without his father's income and his mother's lavish spending, it was no shock he couldn't keep up with the condo's expenses. "My bank account is empty, and I've been told I need to leave if I can't pay by next week. Please, Carol, come back. We loved each other once," he pleaded. I let out a brief laugh before responding calmly, "Give me a break. You just want to use me when it's convenient for you. You think I'll come back, not for love, but for my salary and to do all the housework, right?" There was a pause. "Also, remember when you called me a parasite? Wouldn't I just be in the way now?" He tried to backtrack, but it was too late. I just chose the wrong words back then. I pressed on, asking, "What about Madison and your brother? Are they still living with your parents?" He sighed. "They moved out and are living on their own now. They had a big argument with our parents. My brother wanted Dad to be more sensible, but that only made things worse." Terry's situation seemed dire, but it was a result of his own choices, a tangled mess of financial and familial errors. It was clear he was looking for an easy way out by trying to pull me back into his life. However, I had moved on, focused on building a healthier future for myself and my daughter, free from the chaos of my past with him. Then I heard that my brother-in-law had finally had enough. He stormed out after telling their parents he'd cut ties with them if they continued to disrespect his wife, Madison. It was heartening to know he stood up for her. He seemed like a decent guy. As for Terry, his plea for me to return was met with disbelief. "Come back to you? Are you serious? I'm already overwhelmed just taking care of our daughter. I don't have the energy to deal with people like you." I couldn't help but comment on how odd it was for him to still call his parents Daddy and Mommy. It didn't seem appropriate for someone his age. He tried to backtrack, suggesting I bring our daughter over to live with them. "Weren't you planning to live with her when you first asked me to come back?" I questioned, catching him off guard. "I would never let my daughter live with such a despicable father. Don't ever call me again. If you show up, I'll have my dad arrest you," I warned. His response was a feeble sound, likely recalling my father's intimidating presence. I hung up and blocked his number. Not long after, he tried to reach me with a new number, but I changed mine to cut him off completely. Later, I reconnected with Madison, who reached out to apologize for her silence. She explained that they had moved to the countryside and struggled to set up the internet. Madison and her family now lived in a tranquil rural area and invited me over. When I visited for the first time, I was charmed by the serene surroundings, an ideal place for a child to grow up. During my visit, my brother-in-law shared that Terry and his parents had been evicted from their condo due to unpaid debts and were now struggling financially, a stark contrast to their previous lifestyle. It felt a bit like poetic justice. Meanwhile, I had been working from home and living comfortably at my parents' house. The flexibility of my job allowed me to work from anywhere, so I spent a few relaxing days at Madison's home. I considered the possibility of moving closer to her in the future, hopeful for what lay ahead for my daughter and me. Reflecting on the whole ordeal, buying a high-rise condo on a whim while your wife is pregnant seems absurd, unless you're quite wealthy. It's strange to take such a risk on a normal income. In any case, I felt relieved to be rid of such an unsavory husband. I hope to continue enjoying my peaceful life, possibly relocating near Madison and her family, where everyone got along and fostered a happy environment for my daughter.